WWT presents Experts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of WWT Experts. I'm your host, Matthew Coble, as usual. And as federal civilian agencies are grappling with the rapid pace of technological change, modernizing their data center infrastructures has become a critical priority. However, agencies face unique challenges from budget constraints and staffing shortages to legacy vendor lock-in and the need to balance on-premises and cloud-based resources. Today, we're going to be talking with a couple experts from Worldwide Technology about data center modernization and the strategies that civilian agencies can use to reduce risk, improve operational efficiency, and unlock new capabilities to better serve us, the citizens. So, first up with us is Neil Anderson, who's a VP of Cloud Infrastructure and AI Solutions at Worldwide Technology. And while those are his present areas of focus, he also has expertise in automation, networking, and really the full portfolio of technologies that we bring to our clients. Neil's been with us for over 10 years, and throughout his career, he's advised many large organizations about global architectures and IT strategies that traverse industries and lots of different technologies and partners that we have. Also with us, Kevin Pearson. He's the AVP of Federal Civilian here at Worldwide Technology, and he brings nearly 30 years of leadership in the federal IT space. In his work with our clients, he specializes in modernizing infrastructure, enhancing cybersecurity, and integrating advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and automation. As a trusted advisor to federal civilian agencies, Kevin drives innovation and really ensures those seamless digital services that we as the citizens expect. Gentlemen, great to have you. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great to see you again, Matt.
Yeah, great to see you too, Neil. Well, let's jump right in. So first question for you. What are the key drivers behind the growing need for data center modernization for these federal civilian agencies?
Great question, Matt. And I think there are a variety of needs. There are agencies that are at different paths in their journey. And as the explosion of AI and other data intense applications have come aboard, there's really a need to catch up to the aging infrastructure that our agencies have, both from a capabilities perspective and the rising cost of maintenance that they deal with on a daily basis. There's just been such a rapid pace and increase in the amount of data that our customers have and what they can do with that data, that modernizing to take advantage of all those capabilities is really key, along with a huge security component, of course, with our government customers as well.
Yeah, and we see that across the board with all of our customer base. Data centers are being modernized, lots of different technology changes going on, lots of obsolete equipment. We're trying to help our customers figure out how to modernize and up-level to avoid security risk and outages. And the federal space is not immune to this, seeing exactly the same thing that we're seeing in our large enterprise customer bases, and everybody's got roughly the same kind of challenges.
Yeah. Well, so what are the primary data center technologies and strategies that federal agencies are exploring as part of these modernization efforts?
There are many, right? So I think one is certainly the adoption of cloud and sort of the way that journey has gone. There was an immediate push to cloud, and government deals with mandates, right? Maybe a little bit more than our commercial customers would when they have requirements to send a certain amount, a percentage of their workloads to the cloud. And I think so cloud and then now kind of the move to hybrid and multi-cloud has been a big driver and a big part of that strategy. And I do think that agencies are much more prepared and getting their hands around what that strategy looks like now. And it's not just a rush to put a certain amount of things in the cloud. So I think that's a huge piece of it. There's also a big push towards more edge computing and pushing more towards the edge. And then along with the implementation of automation and some of the AI capabilities that are out there, I think those are some of the main drivers for our customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Kevin hit on a lot of them. And I would just add security is often a big needle mover as well. Trying to figure out how are we going to, reduce the attack surface for applications and bad actors out there, and obviously in the federal space, that's a huge concern to protect citizen data and our federal government.
Well, Kevin, you mentioned, the move to the cloud. I want to sort of drill in on that a little bit. Is it the case that kind of across all federal agencies that there's sort of a similar balance between, what belongs in the cloud versus what lives on premise? Or does that vary from agency to agency? And how are those organizations making those decisions?
It's a great question. I think there's certainly some similarities. I think there were certain applications that when cloud became a mandate and something that every agency knew they were going to have to get on board with, I think there was a kind of a rush to send certain applications out to the cloud that were pretty common across our customers. Now that we're a little further into that journey, I think that there's a little bit more variation between what certain customers are doing and which applications they want to put in the cloud, which they're bringing back on-prem. And security is a huge piece of that decision making, to Neil's point. Security is a big part of everything that they're doing, and obviously most of our civilian agencies are targets, right, from bad actors. And so as they're moving these applications around, that's got to be at the forefront of their thought process. But I do think that the hybrid cloud model is more and more common, but I do think we're seeing some discrepancies now between who's sending what to the cloud and who's sending things back on-prem. So it's been an interesting part of it, but it has certainly evolved, and I do think there's a lot more planning and strategy to that outcome at this point.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there too from our larger global, enterprise customers. There was a rush to cloud there, and many of them had, quotas that were just trying to meet, like, let's put X percentage of our applications in cloud. And some along that journey, kind of scratched their heads and wondered, well, what am I doing this for again? And we really believe in putting the right applications in cloud and then the right applications in your data center. It's going to be a hybrid cloud world, to Kevin's point. And so I think there's some lessons to be learned there for the federal agencies.
Mm-hmm. Well, Neil, what are the main considerations for federal agencies that are looking to reduce their reliance on the dominant virtualization platforms today?
That is a great question. And, it's a very difficult challenge for our customers right now. Everyone is trying to figure out what is their strategy going to be. There are alternative technologies. Some of our customers are exploring those. But it can cost, considerable amount of resources and money to adopt those new platforms. And so most of our customers are sticking to, their current platform. They're going to ride that out. Many are trying to figure out how they're going to reduce dependence on that. And in my opinion, the only real way to resolve that issue is to modernize your applications. The more applications that you can refactor into a modern application framework, microservices architecture, container-based architecture, the better off you're going to be. Those applications are not going to be as reliant on some of those underlying technologies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agree, Neil. And I do think it's a lesson learned in a lot of ways on vendor lock-in and things like that aren't unique just to virtualization, but I think it's opened some eyes for customers around the things that can change in the market and the risks and extra costs that can come with that. So I do think that's been a big eye-opener for a lot of people. And again, back to security as well, right? If they start to change their strategy around how they're using virtualization platforms, they've got to make sure that all of that transition remains secure and does not open up new risks to the bad actors.
Oh. Well, Neil, I want to kind of drill in a little bit more on you mentioned microservices and containers. It seems like there's an opportunity for federal agencies to kind of better leverage emerging technologies like that to improve application modernization. As you talk with our clients in the space, are they doing that, or they have ground to cover to approach that, or what's the current state of the market, and how are you counseling them to move forward with that kind of work?
Yeah, it's a big challenge because we can use nice terms around app refactoring and app modernization, but at the guts of that, you're talking about recoding applications, right? Where you're having to get into the software code and change the structure and the architecture of that code. It's not an easy thing for most customers, particularly when you have legacy applications that may be 10 or 15 years old. It can be really, really challenging, right? Maybe the knowledge base about that code is not as good as the applications that were written just last year, right? And so it can be a big challenge. There are some interesting things on the horizon, though, around AI technologies and using AI to automatically rewrite those pieces of code. It's one of the passion areas I'm kind of diving into myself to figure out, is that real? Is that going to help customers? But what we have seen is some of that can generate code maybe 70% of the way to help modernize that application. And then your application team has to go in and build in that last 30% or so. But that's really promising if we can speed up and automate the way that we have to refactor applications to these newer platforms and architectures.
Yeah, Neil, I think you hit it right on the head, especially with the legacy applications. Those types of applications are pretty prominent across our civilian agencies. A lot of citizen-facing services, right, that are still living on applications that were written, I think you mentioned at least 10 to 15 years ago in some cases. And so some of the expertise from the original teams that developed those likely aren't still there. And just one of the big challenges across our agencies is limited budget, limited manpower, and having to deal with the day-to-day of delivering the mission that they're supposed to deliver, right, both internally and to the citizens, which are ultimately their customers, and dealing with that while also trying to reimagine what these applications could look like. But it's a huge task, but it's an important one because of just even the fault tolerance that comes with staying on these massive legacy applications. If one little piece of it goes down, suddenly a service is not available to the public that needs to be available. So I really think it's critical that they are looking at these technologies from all angles to make them more efficient. Ultimately has cost savings associated with it as well. And just from a risk standpoint, I think it's vital.
Well, Jen, something we're talking about here is effectively the technology debt that accumulates within these federal agencies. And I know that happens for lots of different organizations, public sector, private sector. But what steps are federal agencies taking to really quantify and understand their current levels of tech debt? And what counsel are you providing to help them understand what to do about it?
Yeah, tech debt can be an enormous problem, as platforms become older and older. It's difficult sometimes to, justify the dollar spend to retrofit those and upgrade those. Often when, if the organization and the leaders of that organization are presented with a demand for cash, hey, we need $20 million to go and upgrade X, Y, or Z. There's a little bit of a perception there that, those guys are just looking for new technology, right? That they don't really need to upgrade it. I'm sure it's perfectly fine. We've been working with large, global banks and others. And I think, again, the lessons can translate around, quantifying that in a different way. It's not going and just presenting an ask for more money for technology. Quantifying it in terms of risk to the organization can be super, super beneficial, right? If we don't do X, we're going to experience risk Y, right? Which can be things like, if we don't upgrade this infrastructure this year, we have the risk of 10 outages, and those outages are going to cost, the organization this much in terms of, could be reputational risk, it could be dollar risk, could be security exposure risk. And so doing that step, I think, really helps organizations to look at that in a different way. It's not about just getting the latest technology. It's about, how do I mitigate risk in the organization? And some risk is okay. You're never going to have zero risk. It's impossible and it costs too much money. But you want to mitigate the right risk, and I think that's very helpful. The other thing that I see, again, that our global customers are doing, and I think that the civilian agencies can learn from, is being more predictable to those leaders, giving them a forecast of, hey, we think that this infrastructure is going to come due on these timelines over the next 3 years. Again, that changes the conversation from somebody just asking for a last minute check to go and retrofit something in an emergency to a much more predictable schedule of cost, again, against the risk that the organization is willing to tolerate. That's what we're seeing emerging as a best practice that I think the agency should take a look at.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree, Neil. And I think one of the challenges I think that our agencies deal with the most is the very first part, which is even just full visibility into what the current infrastructure has. And that's got to be step one, or you don't even know really where you're starting, right? And the visibility within some of these massive environments has been a challenge for our customers for years, and that, because step one is a challenge, it makes all the other steps even more challenging. But the risk mitigation and kind of prioritizing what risk is acceptable and what risk is not is also a huge part of it. And I think one of the mindsets, it's challenging for our government customers because in many, many cases, they're dealing with 1 year at a time, budget-wise. And so it's different than maybe a private entity that can come up with a 3-year investment plan or a 5-year investment plan. They certainly do plan that way, but the budgets can be less predictable and can throw a monkey wrench in things and delay projects. So it's prioritization of those risks, prioritization of what needs to be taken care of first, and then making sure the budget matches that and kind of having a plan B if it doesn't. And I do think one of the main mindsets that our customers need to have is that there's no finish line here, right? This modernization is a continuous thing that is always going to be needed. You don't get to the end and say, okay, now we're done. It's an evolving and sort of everlasting project. And so having that visibility to begin with, I think, is what would allow them just more seamlessly to be able to plan for years to the initial refresh or modernization, and then the next 2 or 3 after that as technology continues to evolve.
Mm-hmm. You made a great point, Kevin, around just understanding what your current estate is. That can be really challenging. Everybody is struggling with that. What gives me a little bit of hope there is I am seeing, again, more AI tools brought to that problem of characterizing and discovering what infrastructure do you have. Let's get an accurate, source of truth around what that estate looks like, so that you can do accurate renewals, accurate forecasting of what's going to go into life, et cetera. But you're exactly right. That is the first problem. I'm very hopeful because I see AI tools starting to be applied to that problem and getting really, really good results with our customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jen, so I think I imagine another challenge that federal agencies have is, continuing to upskill their teams, right? And helping their teams learn new skills, whether that's around analytics, AI, kind of these evolutions of, infrastructure modernization. So how are you counseling clients to do that? And what's the right path forward to upskill those resources?
It's a big challenge. It really is. I think it's a challenge both from just manpower in general, the amount of hours that everybody has in their day, depending on the size of their teams and how much time they have to do kind of self-improvement. We often talk about a passion for learning, which is very important in the technology world. And but that also goes along with budgets in our world, because one of the first things that gets cut if there are budget shortfalls are things like training. And so it makes it sometimes hard for our customers to access the training that they need to kind of keep up and get ahead of the curve. Having said that, I do think there are so many ways to learn these days, AI being another one, actually, right, where you can plug in whatever the question is that you'd like to learn, and it comes back with so much material. I think collaboration amongst the different teams within an organization is also critical, because it's very hard to be an expert in all things. And, you've got to have folks that are taking the lead with sort of each piece of their technology environment and then collaborating on how to get to the end state together. But it is definitely a challenge for our customers to keep up with the pace of technology change today, which seems like it's faster than it's ever been.
Yeah, and what I would say is, try to take advantage of some of what I would call the democratized knowledge out there, right? Increasingly, you don't have to pay, $5,000 or $10,000 for a really good, kind of course. There's free courses. There is the Worldwide Advanced Technology Center. You can go in our environment, and there are free learning paths and free labs to go and explore yourself. As you mentioned, Kevin, you can go on one of the AI tools out there and ask questions. They're very knowledgeable. All of that knowledge that's been kind of out there in the public domain is democratized and at your fingertips. So if you don't have access to that structured paid learning, there are ways to take advantage of that with the democratized learning that's out there.
Yeah, I agree, Neil. And I know we've got a lot of great resources there, and that's more democratized than ever. And then it's really just a matter about finding the time for your teams to do that. And I know you guys covered that as well. Okay, so imagine for a second that we are meeting with the leadership team of a federal civilian agency, and they are embarking on, a very intentional strategy around their data center modernization. What are you gonna tell those folks around the right success factors, best practices, and sort of the path to start thinking about that? How do you counsel them?
I think one of the most important things that I think has improved a lot over the years, but still probably could use some work, is starting with what it is they're trying to achieve from a mission perspective. I think too often, we go into a customer, and whether it's us leading with the new technology and not really talking about the outcome, or whether it's them, it's more about what's the newest cool thing that I can put in this data center. And really what we really want to counsel them on is what are we trying to achieve, both with your internal customers and the citizen-facing services you provide. What does good look like, and then back into the technology with all the great folks that we have that can help them do that. I think that's certainly a huge piece of it. And then I do think that there could be more. There's a lot, and it's improved, but I think more interagency collaboration around best practices. What has worked at one agency versus another. And that happens sometimes even within the same sort of umbrella department level. You've got a lot of sub-agencies and a lot of different missions, even just within one, kind of cabinet level agency. And even sometimes within those, there's not a lot of collaboration around best practices, lessons learned. And so we see the same sort of, mistakes or things that may prohibit progress a little bit that are made over and over. So we try to also bridge that gap. And I think we do have a unique ability too to talk about some of the large commercial entities that we work with that Neil's mentioned. That's a huge experience for our folks that come into these conversations, because our government agencies, while they're not Fortune 100 private entities or for-profit entities, they're that size and scale. They're enormous, and there are a lot of best practices that can be leaned on from the work we do with the huge commercial customers.
Mm-hmm.
I think you nailed it, Kevin. The only thing I would add there is that just being aware of the different things that can affect your architecture, right? Security is moving so fast, and you have actors now leveraging AI with attacks. So you need to think about security and how is that going to affect your data center architecture of the future. Cloud is going to affect that, certainly, right? The advances in networking that are going on are going to affect that. Where your users are going to access those environments from, right? It's in a hybrid kind of work from home world, that can change the way that you view the data center architecture. And so I think just being aware of those things and thinking through how might those affect the architecture you're going to need. To your point, Kevin, how is it going to affect your mission and the architecture that you're going to need to deliver that mission can be really, really crucial.
All right, last question for both of you. If you look ahead at the next year, the coming years, what emerging trends or technologies do you think will have the biggest impact on the data center modernization work that federal civilian agencies are doing?
I'll lead with AI. We'll just go alphabetically. We'll start with AI. But I think clearly the just incredible pace at which AI is developing, it kind of has to be the forefront, and what agencies can leverage from all the things that AI can do for them. So that is certainly one. I mentioned edge computing earlier. I think that's a big one. We've got a lot of way more remote folks than we did certainly pre-COVID. It's much more of a hybrid work model. And so that structure and infrastructure has changed a lot. And then I think specifically for civilian, the continued evolution around how they're accessing cloud. And we mentioned that a little bit earlier, but the hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, that entire strategy, when you put that together with AI and the things that they're trying to achieve, I think that landing on the right strategy for each agency is also critical. And certainly the emergence of all the security, security has to wrap around all of this. It is absolutely top of the mission for all of our agencies. And so as that evolution continues as well, the security's got to be at the forefront of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with all those, Kevin, and I'll just touch on a couple of those. I think AI, the way that we're seeing that instantiating itself. There are definitely, AI platforms you can consume in the cloud that make it super fast to get started. But you may have things like privacy of citizen data that you have to consider. Is that something that you can actually put that data in the cloud? If you want to build AI platforms on premise, that can be a huge challenge in a data center in terms of power and cooling requirements, is what we're finding. And again, some data centers are just it's not gonna be possible, given the power and cooling budgets that are in place there. So you have to think about other alternatives, such as, leveraging assets in a co-location facility where they do have power and cooling. So AI is definitely on that. That's sort of on the adoption side, and maybe on the barrier side. On the positive side, though, I'm seeing so many possible services and use cases that are emerging that I think the civ agencies could take advantage of. Having a chatbot that's citizen facing, that's alleviating having to have huge numbers of people taking those calls is really paying off for a lot of our enterprise customers. I think there's a lesson to be learned there in being able to, at least avoid future hiring to scale out more citizen services. You can take advantage of those things. And then the other one I would mention is around observability. As these networks and data centers and, cloud network, it becomes more complex, and you're probably going to be needing to operate these where in an architecture where you don't own the entire network anymore. And so being able to observe that end to end and figure out where troubleshoot, where are the slowdowns? Are they at the user level? Are they at somebody's home internet? Are they in my data center? Are they in a cloud provider, a SaaS application, some service provider connection along the way? It's becoming really super important to be able to think about, network performance and observability end to end, not just the part that you own and operate on. That's something I think is going to be really critical for the future, Matt. And I think we're going to continue to see just a lot of technology innovation around that it's just going to make that task, easier and easier.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to wrap us up, Neil. Thank you. And, Kevin, Neil, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
It was great to talk.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us as well. This is one in a series of episodes we're doing on federal civilian agencies and how they're embracing technologies to achieve their missions. So please join us on WWT.com for the rest of those. And you can head out there as well and see all the other content we've got out on our platform at WWT.com, video and otherwise. We always like to hear your feedback too. So if you get a survey from this episode, love to hear from you how you thought we did, or just drop us an email and let us know. And with that, we will wrap today's episode. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you next time.